something like that, yeah?
The public persona that Paul Verhoeven has is of this kind of like barely contained wild man who's always out there trying to show full frontal fornication and decapitations every moment he can. That may, in an exaggerated way, be a part of Paul's personality, but Paul is also a very serious man and a very intelligent man. He's certainly the only director I know who has a PhD in mathematics.
All of his films are amazingly visceral and intellectual at the same time. You can relate to it on a purely intellectual level, but it's also almost impossible not to feel it on a visceral one as well.
Hold it there, and now it's hoovering there. He's talking, talking till he spits and goes up and down.
Paul is very demanding.
Just keep your eyes a little bit more on the brain.
Whereas a lot of people would accept something that's marginal, he won't. But the results usually speak for themselves because he gets top quality work.
He just is so full of passion about what he's doing that he just goes and goes and goes, and he just leaves everybody else physically exhausted.
He's one of those guys that's totally into what he's doing, knows everything. I mean, we'd go through these meetings and I'd leave the meeting feeling numb, you know, of all the things that we had to build and who was doing what. And he would seem to hold everything in his head.
Verhoeven himself did over 4,000 of his own storyboards, which he then handed into the storyboard department. And Paul was constantly drawing, and Paul was doing things on the side of his scripts. He was doing full-blown production sketches. He was doing little panels.
He's an actor's director. He will use every technique he possibly can just to pull out anything out of you that he doesn't feel like he's getting.
Johnny, look.
And he's just enough to play off of alone, even if he doesn't have everything. Just the way he is, he's so insane.
A lot of our scenes where we're reacting to bugs that aren't there, he really gets down in there with us. He was in the dirt making these noises all day long for us to have something to react to.
I love your sound effects.
I would even turn around and start shooting, and get it.
And he'll come over and go, come on, let's shoot it! Let's do it, come on! And he'll get in there and he runs and he acts like a bug going, ah! Back and forth! Now, it's attack! Ah! He's a motivator.
I think if Paul told me to sit in the corner on my head and spit nickels, I could do it.
He's very focused, and I find it very difficult to be this focused with such a big movie, with so many things to think about. And he's still able to keep some sort of sense of humor about himself. Paul has total control, and that's why it's great working for him, because you trust him, because you've seen RoboCop and you've seen Total Recall, and this is exactly that kind of movie, so you know it's going to be done really well.
You would never think that a liberal European Dutchman with a strong intellectual bent would be interested in a novel like Starship Troopers. But actually, I think that it resonated with many personal experiences that Paul had had on his own.
I was 2 years in the military in Holland when I was a Navy officer, when I was drafted, which was in the 60s, of course. It was a long time ago, but I had never really used that too much in a movie, that knowledge. The three of them will be about here, and Xander is about somewhere here.
He cut his teeth, artistically speaking, on documentaries that he did while in the military in Holland, and then he also has this very strong formative period of 1938 to 1945 when his daily existence is completely surrounded and steeped and soaked in warfare.
He was born at the height of the event that defines probably the 20th century, World War II. He was living under the Nazi boot. V-2 rockets were going off over his house, and Lancaster bombers were dropping bombs in his front yard when they missed the V-2s.
And that had resulted in one of what I consider to be his finest films, a Dutch movie called Soldier of Orange. This was an opportunity for him to reinvest his interest in World War II war movies in a science fiction setting.
It was a very conscious decision to use the outlook and the techniques and the strategy and whatever of World War II, plus perhaps even the visualization of that, to copy that a little bit.
So here you have a culture that can fly to outer space, can go to different planets, and yet when it confronts a foe, uses World War II type cased ammunition with, hard projectiles and drops bombs. Paul was returning to a lot of the old World War II combat film tropes, where you had massive invasion forces who only had their carbines. all these World War II tactics and weapons which had just been altered a little bit just to make them appear a bit more friendly to the future.
The ships are like flying fortresses. It looks like B-17s coming in over a planet. And the drop ships, which replace the power armor, look like Normandy invasion things with the ramps that come down. It's very easy to read Starship Troopers as a condemnation of military force, and it's not, because the military loves that movie.
Foxtrot 4, Blade 6. Or pass your unit through, Blade 1, over. Doc? Casualties?
0, sir.
Very well.
Dale Dye was a military advisor on the picture, and basically it was his job to take the actors and to take the extras and make them look like soldiers on screen.
But you got to get deep before you make your turn.
Yes, sir.
Just get your squad leader in here and tell him, look for those rocks, and then make his cut.
He had formed this group called Warriors, Inc., and the first film he did, I think, was a picture called Platoon. After that, he was quite in demand, and is sort of Mr. Hollywood military movie guy.
Lieutenant Willie, I'm trying to work on it here.
He was an ex-Marine Corps veteran who served in Vietnam. He takes it very seriously and was often annoyed at us for not following the strict Marine Corps line on various things.
Your people are to be screaming in full dudgeon at this point. This is war crime. We will kill some bastards, and I want to hear about it before you hit that camera.
Warriors Incorporated and Dye's whole reason for being is to set up accelerated, compacted, compressed, intense periods of training, like little mini boot camps for actors and performers before a film starts.
The key is your right hand on the pistol grip and be looking around controlling your unit.
We had a 11-day boot camp before the film started.
It was all on location in Casper, Wyoming. They took the primary people out, showed them military maneuvers, how to handle weapons, varying tactics and that type of thing.
We went to Wyoming and we were there for 2 weeks. We were in a real boot camp situation in the middle of nowhere. We did field training exercises every day for 2 weeks. He really trained us well. He got us in a mindset that was totally different.
We get you, sir!
By the time the 2 weeks had gone by and the actual crew for the film showed up there, we were all sitting around looking at the crew thinking, oh, you civilian idiots decide to show up, huh? You're nothing. Who are you? We were, in essence, soldiers for real.
Are there any questions?
No, sir!
Is there anyone who cannot see the sign with the oath of enlistment on it?
Yes, sir!
Very well. Raise your right hand.
I do now, of my own free will, after having been duly advised and warned of the meaning and consequences of this oath, enrolled in federal service for not less than 2 years, and much longer undertaken required by the means of the Federation.
Keep your right hand in the air. Stand by to do it again.
Ladies and gentlemen, clear the area. We're going to have a walkthrough with the extras.
Captain Dye, who had trained the primary cast, also handpicked 4 or 5 of the extras and put them into the boot camp at the same time. Once they had graduated, he put them in charge of their own squads and platoons of extras.
Try to listen up. Our cue is going to be delayed. We're going to be cued on the radio by the captain. So stand by. It's going to be a little bit longer.
It was hilarious to watch on location because you'd see 20 kids in these horribly heavy, suffocating costumes with their weapons at the ready, close order drilling to lunch, and they were deadly serious about it, and they really enjoyed it. These were kids from Montana and Wyoming who were given 110% and were actually living the role of a cap trooper, in all its harshness.